States congressman and a United States senator.
The Incredible Series by Jake. Don't miss his all-new season starting Sunday night at 9. And thanks so much for joining us. Have a good weekend. AB360 starts now.
Tonight on 360, breaking news. Elon Musk at the center of what the New York Times calls an explosive meeting at the White House. A first glimpse of how anger over Doge is building inside the administration. Also, President Trump began the day with a threat of sanctions on Russia, but tough talk didn't last long. Trump's former National Security Advisor, Ambassador John Bolton, joins me tonight. And later, we now know what happened to actor Gene Hackman and his wife and the cause of her death, and the timing of it is surprising. Good evening. We start with the breaking news. Just 3 nights ago, Elon Musk was receiving a standing ovation from President Trump and congressional Republicans before a joint session of Congress. The president personally thanked him and said, "You're working very hard." But tonight, a new report shows that Musk wasn't as warmly received by Trump's cabinet behind closed doors in a meeting last night. The headline for the New York Times reads, "Inside the explosive meeting where Trump officials clashed with Elon Musk." The subheadline reads, "Simmering anger at the billionaire's unchecked power spilled out in a remarkable cabinet room meeting. The president quickly moved to rein in Mr. Musk." Now, the New York Times says that Thursday's meeting was abruptly scheduled one night earlier. That would be about the same time that sources say House Republicans were meeting with Musk, also behind closed doors, to try and reassert their power of the purse. The Times says the cabinet meeting was a sign that Trump is mindful of growing complaints about what Doge is doing. Just this week, we reported on tens of thousands of jobs possibly being cut at the Veterans Affairs Department, many of them actual veterans. There's also been extensive reporting by CNN and the New York Times and many others about bogus claims by Doge of major spending cuts. And when their false claims were pointed out, the items were quietly removed from Doge's so-called wall of receipts without explanation. The Times report includes 2 specific confrontations in that closed-door meeting. The first was between Elon Musk and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This is how, in part, the Times describes the scene. Quote, "You fired nobody," Mr. Musk told Mr. Rubio. Mr. Musk was not being truthful, Mr. Rubio said. "What about the more than 1,500 State Department officials who took early retirement and buyouts? Didn't they count as layoffs?" He asked sarcastically whether Mr. Musk wanted him to rehire all those people just so he could make a show of firing them again. Then, according to the Times, Mr. Musk was unimpressed. He told Mr. Rubio he was good on TV, with the clear subtext being that he was not good for much else. According to the Times, Mr. Trump, finally intervened to defend Mr. Rubio as doing a great job. The Times says the cabinet meeting was a sign that the president is mindful of growing complaints about what Doge is doing. It also covers an argument between Musk and Rubio. Today, the president was asked about this scene in the Times' reporting. Here's how he responded.
Mr. President, since you last spoke about it yesterday, some details have come out about your cabinet meeting with Elon Musk and some clashes potentially between Secretary Rubio and Secretary Duffy.
No clash. I was there. You're just a troublemaker. And you're not supposed to be asking that question because we're talking about the World Cup. Elon gets along great with Marco, and they're both doing a fantastic job. There is no clash.
Mr. President, who has more authority, Elon Musk or your cabinet secretaries?
Any other questions about the World Cup?
Well, the new reporting comes after Politico reported that Trump had told top members of his administration that Musk was, quote, empowered to make recommendations to the departments, but not to issue unilateral decisions on staffing and policy. We start tonight with Kyle Cheney, who shares a byline on that Politico story. Also, the New York Times is Kate Conger, co-author of Character Limit, How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter. So, Kyle, the president says there was no clash. Can you walk us through some of what you've learned?
Sure. Well, I mean, look, this is the question that's animating the entire early part of the second Trump administration, which is what exactly is Elon Musk doing? What power has Donald Trump given him, and is he wielding it unilaterally, or is he doing it, with as sort of an advisory recommendation, and the cabinet secretaries are carrying it out for him? In court, the argument has been, well, Elon Musk doesn't really have any real decision-making power, but as you see from this cabinet meeting, the cabinet secretaries seem to disagree with that. They feel like they're being steamrolled by Elon Musk, and they don't like it, and they're starting to push back. So this is actually going to have some repercussions, I think, in the legal battles that are facing Doge and Elon Musk over what kind of power he's actually wielding, because it sounds a lot more serious and substantive than what they've been presenting in court.
Kate, are you surprised that Musk's authority over firings has... it seems, I guess, been somewhat constrained. I don't know how realistic the constraint is or not.
Well, the constraint here is going to cause a big clash because Musk is someone who likes to be the final authority on decisions in all of his companies and all of his business dealings. He's always the one who's calling the shots. And being told that he can't, I don't know how long that will last.
Kyle, what do you know about why the president decided to try to curb some of Musk's power over the cabinet? Because then later out he put a statement saying, you know, things would be done with the scalpel, not with the hatchet, which certainly flies in the face of Elon Musk, you know, running around the stage with a chainsaw.
Right. And I mean, yet in the same breath, he said, you know,
He's positioning. The government has positioned him in a certain particular position to do a certain particular job toward being a ramrod. What we're starting to hear now is a bunch of whiners. What we're hearing now is a bunch of complainers. I'm going to do a follow-up on what I'm talking about, but I want you to listen to some more of this.
is legally salient too. That's why his speech and praising Elon Musk as the head of Doge in a speech to Congress, immediately had repercussions both in court and possibly with his other cabinet members. And I think, it's a lot of it's a Rorschach test right now, and this is sort of the next phase of it.
Kyle, what does it say, the fact that this meeting even leaked out, the details of this meeting began to leak out?
Well, I wonder how long you can sit on a meeting where you have that kind of explosive and tempestuous sort of interaction. It just seemed like, number one, I think they wanted it out there that Donald Trump was constraining Elon Musk. They wanted that message out there that he is putting curbs on him, in part, again, for some legal advantage, and also maybe, again, to sort of let his cabinet know, hey, I got your back to a degree. But once you had those clashes, I think the idea that they would keep that hidden for long was probably too late.
Kate, how unusual is it for people to criticize Elon Musk, to his face during a meeting, whether it's the Secretary of State or anyone else? I mean, is he used to that kind of pushback? It seems like he's often surrounded by people who, are very quick to laugh at all his, jokes.
A lot of the people in Musk's inner circle are yes men who will go along with whatever he directs them to do. He did encounter a lot of this kind of pushback when he was taking over Twitter. There were employees there who were telling him he couldn't do what he wanted to do, or raising legal complications and saying, this might not conform with law and we need to do it differently. And in those situations where he was challenged, especially in a group setting where other people were witnessing that, he was very quick to lash out and to fire those people. And so this raises an interesting question where he is not in charge of these cabinet appointments, whether he will lean on Trump to try to get rid of some of these people who are challenging them. He does not like to be challenged publicly in particular, and so this is going to be a very tense moment for him.
Kyle, is it clear to you?
You keep in mind, whenever George Washington done what George Washington done here in America, they didn't just do this out of a whim. They had spies, they had Minutemen, they had a joint committee that had come together and said, this is what we must do if we're going to survive this. And you know what? That's what they done. And if it wasn't for what George Washington done, way, way, way back then, that we're fixing to celebrate 250 years, I think, in the next year or so, towards this country being 250 years old, we wouldn't have the red, white, and blue flag called America.
We're chasing constantly.
Kyle Cheney, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Also, Kate Conger, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Perspective now from New York Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman, who sits on the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees. Congressman Goldman, I want to get to the looming government funding deadline in a moment, because it seems like a lot of this is kind of a distraction to try to avoid attention on that. But what do you make of the president's cabinet secretaries reportedly sparring with Musk?
Well, I find it very noteworthy, not only that the cabinet secretaries are clearly bristling at what Elon Musk is doing, but we've started to hear some comments from some Republican senators about needing congressional approval for what.
And also, I want to bring out another fact. Even though Moses was delegated by God in basically liberating the children of Israel from the Egyptians, pertaining to their slavery, they still mumbled, they still complained, they still backbited, they still was hypocritical in jabbing and going up against that in which what should have been looked upon as being a gracious gift from God. But you're always going to have a certain group of people in there that I don't care who they are, just as my granddaddy used to say, son, you would complain if they was to hang you with a new rope. And that's exactly right. Which I know that may be a little gall pertaining to the message that I'm trying to say here. But what I am trying to say is it don't matter who it was. That could be Tiger Woods right there. That could be Tiger Woods in that same man's position right there. Being worth that kind of money. And Donald Trump giving him the green light. And I guarantee you, you would have just as many complainers. You would have just as many people that would be going up against some of the tactics that he's been doing now for the past 3 or 4 weeks towards basically draining the swamp. For surely people know that whenever Trump got reelected towards draining the swamp, for surely they know that this was what was coming around the corner. There's really no way for any American human being that is in touch with reality in any form or fashion for them not to have known that this was coming down the pike.
You have to figure out exactly what each program is doing and whether it's effective or not. Elon Musk, as the New York Times reported, and you mentioned several times on this show, Anderson, 10 of his 12 top line items of canceled programs on this wall of receipts were false or inaccurate or misleading.
Right, they said there was $8 billion,
an
$8 billion ICE contract canceled. It was actually $8 million. $8 billion is the entire budget for ICE, and that was a New York Times. David Fahrenthold found that.
Absolutely, and even by his own account, he is making all sorts of mistakes, and that's before he has any idea what these programs actually do.
And I'm pretty sure he's already, and I've already heard him say that there would be mistakes. But he's basing this off of the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the grease. And eventually, if he has made the wrong move pertaining to the wrong department, there'll be enough squeaky wheels that will be making enough noises that he'll pay attention to, and he'll go in and he will reform his decision that he's made towards doing a complete sweep out. That's how that goes. There's really no way for you to micromanage this because it's so big. America is so huge with all these different freaking departments and all these different policies and all these different people that holds all these different positions. Now, I do think that before he started slicing the Veterans Association, he should have looked a little harder at that.
A continuing resolution to go to the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, which would be the first time in a long, long time that there was no appropriations bill to fund the government for an entire fiscal year. This is why that is so bad. First of all, it keeps funding levels where they are right now. And as we know, inflation has gone up, our needs have gone up. It constrains agencies as to how they can, A, use the money, and B, initiate new programs or new initiatives. But more importantly, it incorporates all those things that Elon Musk says are waste, fraud, and abuse. They refund those, and it gives almost unfettered discretion to Donald Trump and the executive branch and Elon Musk to move money around however they want. So this is, quote unquote, a stopgap that is really just designed to give Elon Musk even more power to do his chainsaw routine on the federal government.
Congressman Goldman, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. I want to turn to the Pentagon and the drive by the Trump administration to eliminate not just any efforts to promote diversity in the U.S. Armed Forces, but eliminate even any mention of diversity. At the end of January, the new Secretary of Defense, as you know, issued a press release with the headline, "Identity Month's Dead at DOD," banning any official recognition of Black History Month or any other minority groups in the military. But that, it seems, was just the start. Last week, the Pentagon ordered the removal from its websites any mention, photographs, or videos that, quote, promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, according to the Associated Press, more than 26,000 images, photographs, have since been flagged for removal across all military branches. Unclear why this is a controversial photo, but it was flagged. It's a photo of an American hero, Private First Class Harold Gonzalez, who was born into a Mexican-American family in California. He won the Medal of Honor for his heroic actions during the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. This photo showing black military personnel undergoing training at an Air Force base in Illinois during the Second World War, that was flagged for removal. Perhaps it won't be mentioned any longer in the official histories of the Defense Department, but lest we forget, the U.S. military was segregated until 1948. During World War II, black men and women served in all branches of the armed forces while they were facing racism and segregation. It wasn't until 1948 that President Harry S. Truman signed an executive order banning segregation. Here's another photo apparently flagged for removal. Air Force Staff Sergeant Christina Scales in 2009. That's when the photo was taken. She's performing a pre-flight check before departing on a mission in a C-17. Why this photo is worthy of purging from the Pentagon's public records is unclear. Apparently anything related to gay service members is now also to be purged, including this photo of the B-29 aircraft that dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. Now, why would an aircraft be flagged for removal? It appears because the name of the plane is the Enola Gay. It was named after the pilot's mom, Enola Gay Tibbets, but the mere mention of the word gay has someone in the administration clutching at their pearls. Still to come tonight, the president says we're doing very well with Russia hours after threatening them with sanctions. His former national security advisor, Ambassador John Bolton, joins us to talk about it. Also, has the mystery been solved? Major new developments tonight about when and how legendary actor Gene Hackman and his wife died. We'll have the latest ahead.
What they're going to say about Gene, the actor, I find it to be appalling. If his health was to the degree that his dementia had basically overtaken him, and him no longer basically being conscious of reality around him. Now, I realize that these people's worth a lot of money. They're billionaires, you know what I'm saying? Or at least millionaires. But the fact of the matter is, the same set of standard rules should apply towards them as it does everybody else. In other words, if you get to the point that you can no longer see right and you can no longer operate a vehicle safely, by law, between a doctor and a judge, they can basically have your driver's license removed. By law, according to the medical industry, if you get to the point that you're constantly falling, if you get to the point that you're constantly harming yourself in some sort of way because you just cannot maneuver or take care of yourself, and that can be physically or mentally, they're supposed to put people like that into an area where people can take care of them. Now, granted, the lady that he was married to probably was looked upon as being some sort of a carekeeper because she didn't have dementia. But to hear what they are saying that occurred was absolutely, it was bone chilling to me to think that we would let even our richest of the rich escape the same type of medical guidelines as we expect out of other people. And to be quite honest with you, I find it to be appalling of what they're saying and how that she died first. About 5, 6, 7 days later, he died. And then the dog that was, I guess, in a cage wound up starving to death or something. Anyway, she supposedly died of a disease that come from, I guess, mice or rats or something. I had an aunt that basically died, Miss Zorabelle Lovelace, because of basically the same thing. Her house was so infestated with fleas and everything else She was a miser. She wanted to hang on to everything. You basically walk around in her house in alleyways, just basically tunnels, and she basically died of shingles. And I'm sure something had stemmed off that virus or that disease, whatever, however way you want to categorize shingles, that had something to do with the infestation that was in the house, because it wasn't just fleas. It was varmints, it was snakes, it was raccoons, it was hams that had been left on the countertop where she just basically left it. There was pantries inside the pantry where beans and potatoes and stuff in cans basically got so hot that it swelled up and bursted, or it got so cold that it bursted. One or the other, I don't know which. But it was inhumane for a person to live in conditions like that, and because of it, I think it had a great deal to do with Miss Zorobel Lovelace's death. Now, I've never said that to nobody, but I was in charge, coming from Union University, in cleaning up her estate. Me and about 6 other people. I had to hire a crew to go out there and do that. And we first sprayed it down with flea spray, brought in a professional crew, and about 2 weeks after that, I guess all them eggs started hatching, and man, they come out swinging. They come out in vengeance whenever they did come out, and basically had to come back the second time and put a big balloon over her house and really spray it.
On Russia till a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it is too late. Thank you. But that posture didn't last long. Hours later, he had this exchange with a reporter.
President Putin is bombing Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you still believe him when he tells you that he wants peace?
You know, I believe him. I think we're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards.
From large-scale banking sanctions to we're doing very, very well with Russia in just a few hours. Again, like in that Oval Office confrontation, President Trump said that Ukrainian President Zelensky doesn't have the cards. He also doesn't have military aid and some intelligence sharing, which the president has paused. Today, President Trump also suspended Ukraine's access to certain commercial satellite imagery purchased by the U.S. government. Ukraine uses the imagery to track Russian troop movements. Now, that news comes as Russia launched a major assault on several regions across Ukraine last night. 70 missiles and almost 200 drones were used. 2 U.S. defense officials tell CNN that the U.S. is still sharing intelligence Ukraine can use to defend itself, but has, quote, scaled back sharing intelligence that could be used to go on the offense. Today, the president was asked about the attacks and the pause in aid.
Do you, Mr. President, think that Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of the U.S. pause right now on intelligence and military aid to Ukraine?
No, I actually think he's doing what anybody else would do. I think he wants to get it stopped and settled, and I think he's hitting them harder than he's been hitting them. And I think probably anybody in that position would be doing that right now.
Joining me now is John Bolton, who served as National Security Advisor to the President during his first term and as U.S. Ambassador to the UN in the George W. Bush administration. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for being here. How does this president go from talking about sanctions in the morning against Russia to essentially saying their strategy of pounding Ukraine is what anybody would do in this situation, and taking advantage of the president's position?
Well, because I think he knew that the so-called threat this morning was totally hollow. As did Vladimir Putin, and he did it simply to try and show some kind of balance given the things he had said about Zelensky and the Ukrainians. If you look at the statement about the actual threat, he threatens 3 things: banking sanctions, and tariffs. Now, I'll assume there's banking sanctions are just a subset of sanctions. I don't know why you would have 2 separate things. But let's take tariffs first. I don't understand it. Who knows? But on tariffs, Russian exports to the United States last year, the only year we have full statistics, were a little bit less than $3 billion, which is trivial compared to the total volume of U.S. trade with the rest of the world. And in fact, in 2021, in other words, the last full year before Russia's invasion in 2022, they were about $30 billion. So over this period of time since the invasion, U.S. imports from Russia have already shrunk 90%. So the tariff thing is effectively meaningless. Banking sanctions, if there are banking sanctions we haven't imposed on Russia, I'd like to know why not. But in any event, as with really all the sanctions that have been imposed, and this is a general problem for sanctions, Russia has very successfully evaded, particularly the financial sanctions, moving through China's opaque financial system to get into global markets. So I think Putin completely understood that threat was totally hollow.
It seems now the U.S. is not doing cyber operations against Russia, according to reporting. We've mentioned new reporting that the Trump administration has suspended Ukraine's access to commercial satellite imagery purchased by the U.S. government, which comes after the pause, obviously, in U.S. military aid and the sharing of intelligence. How long do you think the Ukrainians can hold up without that kind of support?
Well, and it's a question of what other NATO members may be able to supply them. I think it's really despicable to stop providing the intelligence to Ukraine. This is all part of how Trump does business. It's all personal. I know this is hard to understand, that people think there's some policy behind it, but it's not. Trump believes that U.S. relations with other countries are embodied in his personal relations with the foreign heads of state. He thinks Vladimir Putin is his friend. He's never liked Zelensky, not since the famous perfect phone call in 2019. And this is what you're getting. But if I may come to this order suspending offensive cyber operations against Russia, this is a huge mistake for the United States. Forget Ukraine. This isn't going to make Russia more eager to come to the table. It's the rest of Trump's policies abandoning Ukraine and taking Russia's side that prevent Russia from coming to the table. Why should they negotiate when Trump gives them everything they want? And even more importantly, I think the cyber operators would tell you that part of what's important here, dealing with Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, any of our cyber adversaries, is to have what they call persistent engagement. If you're not always probing the Russians, you're giving them a chance to tee up their own offensive operations. If there were some deal here, a momentary truce, that'd be one thing. This looks to me like just another Trump giveaway.
And just so I'm clear, is it true that Russia is always probing the U.S. and civilian infrastructure,
Absolutely.
and hospitals and electrical systems,
Absolutely.
to try to see weaknesses?
I think that's clear. The Russians say, "Oh, it's not Russia. No, it's some troll farm operating under some fake name, some cutout operation." But they're doing it all the time, and really, I think we've improved our offensive game beginning in the Trump administration when we loosened Obama administration restrictions on offensive cyber. But cyber's like any other human domain. If you're not probing the adversary, you're taking risks for America. Again, forget Ukraine here. That's not part of the equation. This is backing away from dealing with the Russian cyber threat. I think it's a big mistake.
Ambassador Bolton, I appreciate your time. Thank you. Coming up next, why President Trump is threatening new tariffs for Canada after announcing that 1 month pause just yesterday. Plus, the New Mexico chief medical examiner reveals the cause of death for actor Gene Hackman and the surprising cause of death for his wife, and including a new timeline of their final days. We'll be right back.
The fact of the matter is, whenever Trump done what he done because of Ukraine president doing what he done, in a sense it was almost like throwing gas on a fire. Rather than trying to put the blaze out, you actually increase the heat, the intensity of the blaze. Because you just got through telling the people that you had made full devotions to in being your ally, that you would be there for them and with them to the end, to the very end. So whenever Putin heard that, and his administration, that basically was a green light to them by saying, wow, looks like the United States is abandoning their responsibilities that they had originally made with the Ukrainians, and which in actuality they did. And it really puts them in such of a horrible position towards being nothing but now sitting ducks. And of course, I don't just lean towards what's going on presently, but I go back into the Biden administration and define the very fact that whenever this all broke out, unbeknownst to them, that it basically blew up in everybody's faces. That's whenever the Biden administration should have went about the Ukrainian-Russian war differently than what they did. Instead, they was patronizing. They was patronizing the Russians by not going ahead and going in there full force and stopping them. Oh, they was giving different artillery weapons to the Ukrainians, but the Ukrainians the whole time was begging, hey, please, please give us this. Hey, please, please give us that. And they wouldn't. America would not give them what they was asking for whatever reasons. Maybe it was because it was going to take too long to train them in. Maybe it's because it was a higher price tag on what they was asking for. I don't know. But now they've been whipped down so far to where they really don't have no other alternative other than to start thinking about either surrendering non-negotiably or giving away the farm. The fact of the matter is, you're talking about a country that has, if I'm not mistaken, 12 time zones compared to ours. It's only got 5. And you're talking about the Ukraine government basically the size of Texas. That's a David and Goliath scenario. There's no doubt as many people, as much money as what Russia's got pertaining to their economy over there, they can basically now put it on cruise control and basically wear the Ukrainians completely, totally out by wearing them down. And they know it. They're sitting ducks. And to me, it has blowed up in our president's face pertaining to his negotiating tactics, that now look what's going on. It's a sad scenario because it was already brewing. It was already a sad scenario to begin with, and we was the ones that promised them people that we was going to do X, Y, and Z, and now we're not doing X, Y, and Z. Wow, is that the way we're going to do the rest of our allies? By promising them one thing, but doing totally different, something different? It makes us all look bad because we don't have the backbone to do the proper and right things, much less the majority of the people in America don't have the backbone in speaking truth to power. It just so happens I don't have nothing else to lose. A matter of fact, it would be better off. I would be better off if they would have went ahead and completely annihilated me off the planet. That way I would be in heaven right now. But because they've drug it out, now you're having to listen to these video links that I continue to keep making again and again and again towards me micromanaging what's going on. And I said that like, I guess 6 or 7 years ago, whenever I first come out to the social media platform pertaining to public domain.
When the president announced those 25% tariffs, the Wall Street Journal published this editorial titled, "Trump Takes the Dumbest Tariff Plunge," which all led Canada's Prime Minister to say this.
Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do.
Well, running to be the next Prime Minister of Canada is Chrystia Freeland. She's the former Deputy Prime Minister and former Minister of Finance. She joins me now. Ms. Freeland, appreciate you being with us. First of all, what do you make of this whiplash coming from the White House, full steam ahead on tariffs and on pause, and there are more threats? Is this a coherent strategy?
Well, look, there have been more flip-flops than we can keep track of here in Canada. But what we do know is, the Prime Minister is right, the Wall Street Journal is right. These are the dumbest tariffs in history. This is utterly self-mutilating. It's really a perverse approach, Anderson, because America is hurting itself. Moving in this direction, the president is killing the U.S. stock market. Your stock market is actually performing worse than the stock market in Europe or in Canada. You're going to raise the prices on gas. You're going to raise the prices on groceries. You're going to make electricity more expensive. And all for what reason? Because Canadians aren't nice enough? I mean, come on. This is just utterly absurd. America is hurting itself. And the end result has been to do something which is really hard to do: antagonize Canadians. There is this wave of patriotism in Canada right now, the likes of which I have never seen in my life. We started off being really hurt by this because we know that we